All right, so first up, we have the Joker movie, which, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, first of all. And second of all, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It definitely lives up to the hype, and it's one of the best movies that I've seen in a minute. I'm definitely looking forward to rewatching it. I'm also glad that I actually went out to the theater to watch this one, as opposed to just watching it at home, which is nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I watch most of the movies I watch at home, but the missus and I like going to the movies. That's one of our things. We just do it less now after having the baby, but we definitely made some time for this one, and it was very well worth it. So this Joker movie, which is, I feel like it was kind of like cryptic leading up to it. Like we didn't know much about it, and little like teaser trailers that came out months ago didn't really tell you much about the story. It just showed you Joaquin Phoenix, which does an amazing fucking job in this movie. Like there's like already like Oscar winning talks, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised if he wins for like best actor or something like that. But yeah, leading up to the release of the movie, we don't like know much about it. We just see Joaquin doing like Joker-y shit. Besides that, the writer and director and producer of it is Todd Phillips, which is more known for his comedies than anything else. I don't know if this was his first like drama or like non-comedy, but he historically has written and produced movies like The Hangover, Hangover 2, Hangover 3, Road Trip, Old School, Due Date, and, you know, dope comedies like that. But there was definitely a tinge of, can this guy pull off a, you know, drama like this? You know, there was like a bit of like anticipation of, you know, is he going to pull this off, or, you know, is it going to suck because it's his first time, you know, doing something like this? And he absolutely knocked it out of the park. Starting with this being a period piece, kind of, right? Because it's like Gotham City, but it's like New York City back in the day. The cinematography of it was completely on point. Like the look and the feel, like it had this artsy, nostalgic tone to it that was consistent throughout the entire film. And it was just shot beautifully. And then going back to Joaquin Phoenix, he is definitely a method actor, gets completely, you know, in his head about the role. He lost 52 pounds for this role, 5'2", and it definitely showed in his character. You know, there's like a few scenes with him with his shirt off. You can see like his rib cage, and on his back you can see his spine, and he looks like malnourished and weak, but at the same time oddly like fierce. And in an interview I saw with Todd Phillips, he was saying that Joaquin initially had an idea to play like a fat Joker, like he wanted to gain weight for it. And Todd Phillips told him that the vision that he had and the way he saw it was, you know, actually, you know, like really like skinny and malnourished and stuff, but he wanted him to like look like a wolf, kind of. So I guess that's where that like fierceness that I picked up on like comes from. He had this creepy, like iconic laugh. It was involuntary for the most part. Whenever he felt awkward or was in like a weird situation, he would like laugh, and he was kind of like offbeat like that in the weirdest, most awkward moments. Like his kind of like defense mechanism, I guess, if you can call it that, but it's not really that, because it wasn't really like a defense mechanism. It was more like a Tourette syndrome kind of impulse to just laugh. And the obvious through line throughout the movie is that we're, you know, watching a guy who's like barely holding on to reality and clearly has mental illness issues just become completely unhinged and lose it. Like we see that transformation of him in this film, which is very interesting to follow, like in and of itself, even without the weight of the character of the Joker and, you know, being like the villain of Batman or like any of that type of baggage. Just this guy who starts off, you know, trying to do the right things and going through the motions and having this job and looking after his mother, but something's definitely off with him. and then eventually kind of like standing up for himself when he's in that scene with the three douchey Wall Street guys that are in the train, and they're harassing a girl, and he's like on the other side of the train, but he's witnessing it. He feels awkward about it, so he starts laughing. And then the guys think that, he's being like a smartass and stuff, then they come over to fuck with him, and he winds up accidentally, quote, shooting one of them, and then he winds up shooting the other two and killing them. And even at that point, like, he still tried to, like, he's fucked up in the head enough to like compartmentalize that and try to like go about his business and go on with his life like that never happened. But that didn't even make him like come unhinged. It was, I feel, that gave him like a taste for like killing, and made him realize the indifference that he felt towards it, which surprises him, because it was almost like as if he knew that he was supposed to feel some type of way about that. But then he's surprised to find out that he doesn't. And, he still goes home. He's a little freaked out about the fact that it happened, but like indifferent about like their lives or whatever. And, goes about his business, takes care of his mom and stuff like that. And, things are starting to, quote, normalize for him again, back to like his routine and shit. And it's not until the betrayal or perceived betrayal of his mother that, makes him completely go off the rails and just double down on, being the Joker and doing Joker type shit. And now it's important to note that purposely, as Todd Phillips has said like repeatedly, and I think it's like common knowledge now, around this movie, this Joker character is off script, meaning it's, obviously based on the iconic Joker character, but they're not following the exact like origin story of the Joker from like the comic books or any of the previous Batman movies. In the movie, Todd Phillips even plays with the idea of the Joker and Bruce Wayne being half brothers, and that Bruce Wayne's father like banged and impregnated the Joker's wife, mom, when she used to work as a servant in the house. And according to her, she got fired from that job, and Thomas Wayne, I think his name is. I know it's like something with a T. I think it's Thomas, the father of Bruce Wayne. He like makes her like sign some papers, which she never really says like what they were. So I thought initially it was like some sort of like NDA or something like that. Then I've heard other people say that it's no, that it's referencing like the adoption paperwork that the Joker like later uncovers that he's adopted, which is again what the perceived betrayal is from his part, because he thinks that's his mom, but then there's this paperwork of him being adopted that he finds out about from Thomas Wayne when he confronts him, saying that he's his father, and he tells him that he's not, that his mother's batshit crazy and he was adopted. And then the Joker goes looking for this paperwork and finds it, and then pretty much spirals out of control. Like after that, kills his mother, etc., etc., etc. Now, that was a key scene for me. Because the movie also, by the way, it goes in and out of reality versus like him just fantasizing shit. So once you catch on to that, like somewhere like in the middle of the movie, when I think the big reveal of that is his relationship with a neighbor down the hall, that one day he just like knocks on her door, like kisses her and like sleeps with her and becomes his quote girlfriend. And then there's scenes of them together like in the future, like going to the movies, and going to he tries to do stand-up comedy and she goes to see him, and just them dating, hanging out, stuff like that. But it's all just shit that he fantasized in his head, because he bumped into this neighbor in the elevator one day, and then just imagined all that other shit. And that's like revealed towards like the middle of the movie. So then once that's revealed, it puts into question everything that you've seen. What has happened, what hasn't, what has he fantasized, what has he not. So there's a ton of interesting little like doors and avenues you can go down when factoring that in. But going back to the scene that I was referring to, that I think is a key scene, is which I think is also imagined. I think the whole shit is imagined. Spoiler alert of my own like little theory. But something that supports that thought or that theory of mine is that scene when he goes to Arkham Asylum, I believe it's called, and he asks Paperboy from Atlanta, the show Atlanta, who's like an attendant there. He asks him for these records, and he comes back. Like the scene starts with him coming back, and the Joker was like waiting for him to come back with his paperwork. He like apologizes to him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry it took so long, but the paperwork from a year or two ago, normally takes like an hour to find because you have to do a lot of digging, and this file's from 30 years ago or whatever the fuck you said, or 10 years ago. No, I think he said like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it is, implying then that takes what, like fucking 100 hours. You know what I mean? So that just made me think. Also, he's probably like imagining this shit too, because who the fuck would do that? Like, who would spend so much time looking for a file for someone that just like came up to them and asked for it? You know what I mean? And if that's the case, that it took like hours and hours and hours to find something, like a clerk or employee or something like that would probably tell you, "Oh no, you need like the right forms," or they would blow you off in some way, I would think. And then this is the file that the Joker winds up like wrestling away from him and runs away with it and reads it, and that shows all the like adoption supporting evidence that he was adopted. And then this allows him, or like gives him agency in his own mind, to justifiably kill his mom for lying to him and betraying him. So yeah, I think that's one reason why I feel like just that scene, like the way that played out, well, I think the whole thing is imagined, because from a fantasizing standpoint, like from the Joker's standpoint, if he's fantasizing that like interaction, the way it would go in his favor would be, somebody saying, "Oh yeah, I'll go dig up this file that takes hours upon hours to get. I'll be right back." You know what I mean? It sounds like outlandish, like type shit, just like him banging the pretty neighbor from down the hall just by knocking on her door. Something else that I feel supports that is the like flashback scenes of him being in the like mental institution and banging his head up against like the glass. And you see this when he's like sitting down with his social worker and they're speaking about like medications, and she's like busy just like going through the motions, seemingly being like an overworked social worker that either can't give a fuck or doesn't want to give a fuck, which the Joker, points out to her, saying, "You never listen to me. Why are you asking me to talk to you? And, I've been telling you time and time again that all there is negative thoughts. I don't have any positive thoughts," and blah, 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 blah. And like that conversation, that exchange between them, I feel is kind of like a microcosm of how we treat mental illness for the most part in this country and in certain cultures. Like, we stigmatize it, and a way to deal with it is to kind of sort of go through the motions and not deal with it. And there was even a couple lines of dialogue where she says something to the effect of, "But you're taking, X number of medications. Surely it must be doing something," which again plays into the Western medicine belief of, there's a pill for everything, and a pill can fix anything and everything, which we clearly know that is not the case. Issues like mental illness and, the myriad of types of mental illness that there are require, targeted, specific attention and trial and error with different drugs and different types of psychological therapy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Not just you're taking all these drugs, clearly they must be working or doing something approach. There was another scene towards the end, or at the very end, I think, actually, where they show, that social worker, like interviewing him, but like in the insane asylum, which I also feel like plays into my theory that the whole shit is imagined. Then it shows him like running away or running down the hall and leaving like a trail of like blood from his shoes, implying that he killed her. And I just feel like that, like the interactions that we saw throughout the movie with him and the social worker at the social worker's office, and then them saying that they were going to close down because they didn't have like enough funding, and stuff like that. I feel like all that was just manifested in his mind, but he was just, having these conversations and shit with her in the insane asylum. But then, even though I think that there's another, not competing theory, but, well, I guess it would have to be competing because I don't see how it would fit in. Like, I don't think both could be true, but there's this, let's call it a competing theory that I just find to be like the sexiest one that I've heard, which I heard mentioned in an interview with Todd Phillips, and him saying that this one theory is something that a friend of his, when they were watching the movie, came up with, and other people have like caught on and have said the same thing, and this is one that I'm like, damn, that would be dope if it is true. And the theory is that Joaquin Phoenix's character wasn't necessarily the Joker, but he was the person that influenced the person that eventually becomes the real Joker. Because if you watch the movie, there's, like riots in the street and stuff like that. There's a lot of, I guess, financial inequality, and like the garbage folks are on strike, and there's like the super rich elite, and then everybody else basically. And with these riots that were spawned after the killings that Joaquin Phoenix's character did in the subway, spawned like a bunch of people wearing Joker masks and just like walling out. And there's actually the iconic scene of when historically the Joker character kills Bruce Wayne's parents, which then spawns Bruce Wayne into wanting to get revenge and becoming Batman. That scene happens, but it's not Joaquin Phoenix that does it. It's somebody else in a Joker mask. So that kind of plays into that theory. And yeah, so I think that's the dopest, meaning behind the movie, or like deconstruction of the movie that I've heard. But I don't see how that kind of like works with my theory of the entire shit being imagined. And him just being, a crazy person in an insane asylum that's imagining all this stuff. From his mom to his job as a clown to the girlfriend to killing people to, spawning a revolution and becoming like this martyr hero kind of character. Maybe. It kind of plays into the whole mental illness and, being so manic that you have these grandiose thoughts or expectations for yourself. Who knows, though? Luckily, Todd Phillips did say that he'll reveal what he meant, what he and his team meant when writing and putting the movie together, which I can't wait to hear eventually sometime in the future. But he said, and I agree, that, he's having fun with like all these theories and stuff like that are coming out. And it's art, right? It's subjective. Everybody gets something different from it. People see things from different angles, different perspectives, and that's like a beautiful thing in and of itself. What else was dope about this movie? There was this hilarious scene like towards the beginning where Joaquin is on the bus and there's this little kid like on his knees in front of him, like in the seat in front of him, like facing Joaquin. And Joaquin starts like playing with the kid, like playing like peekaboo and making the kid laugh. And the mother turns around saying, "Stop bothering my kid." Leave my kid alone. Stop bothering him. And he's like, what? Like, he was just like cracking up and fucking playing peekaboo. Like he emits that type of emotion. Like that type of reaction. But he doesn't say anything. He just starts like laughing with that awkward laugh. And then he hands the lady a card that says that he has this condition called something. And he involuntarily laughs and blah, blah, blah. But I thought that was both a hilarious scene and also an interesting way that they decided to tell us like what it is that he has in terms of like that weird laugh. And of course that scene with the stairs that he like dances on is definitely an like iconic scene that's gonna like live forever in and of itself. And here in New York, those stairs are in the Bronx. And I believe I've seen them before because I think my sister-in-law, where she used to live, is like right around the corner from like where those stairs are. And if it's not the same ones, it's like the same type of setup. It's like these long ass stairs in the middle of like a block that's like makes you realize like, yeah, we're on like a hill kind of. But yeah, those stairs like right around like Halloween, there was like a shitload of people like going there, and it's become like a little like tourist attraction. And people taking pictures on it, and videos trying to like replicate the dance and stuff, which I'm sure is something that they couldn't have predicted, but it's another cool takeaway of the movie. Another cool thing is Todd Phillips hooking up fellow comics. Well, actually, I don't know if he's ever done like stand-up comedy, but he's obviously within the comedic world. But there's a bunch of comics in this movie, like Mark Maron, Brian Callen. Shout out to the WTF podcast, and shout out to the Fighter and the Kid podcast. Sam Morrill, Gary Goldman, and Greer Barnes are also in it as well. So I thought that was pretty cool. And other interesting scenes are like the scene, for example, where Joaquin Phoenix's character goes to a comedy club because he wants to be a stand-up comic, and he just goes to a club and he's like taking notes on what's funny, what's not, and he laughs on all. He's like offbeat. He's like on a different wavelength. He laughs at all the moments where nobody's laughing, and then when other people laugh, he's not laughing. I thought that was like interesting scene to kind of like depict that this guy's like broken, kind of, or like against the grain. But yeah, man, that's all I could think of right now. That's my take on the movie Joker. I highly recommend it, and I definitely am going to watch this one again.